This is a crash calendar, and I think it is the most ridiculously easy way for beginners to start to find more time to spend on the things that they enjoy and to start feeling less overwhelmed by all of the things they have on their plate. You probably already know that you should be using a calendar to manage your time, but I'm guessing that nobody taught you how to do this or why it's even important in the first place. But fear not, because if you start using a crash calendar, you're going to be ahead of about 90% of people who can't manage their time. So I'm going to talk you through the 3 ridiculously easy steps if you want to start using a crash calendar. As always, the timestamps are on screen and they're in the description, but that's enough hanging around. Let's get right into the video. This might upset a lot of people. But the reason why the majority of people feel overwhelmed is because they have these big, amazing goals that they want to achieve, but in the day-to-day, they're not doing anything to push them in the direction of those dreams. I've said it before, but this is so important, so I'll say it again. Where we want to be in 10 years' time is a direct result of how we spend our years. And how we spend our years is really just how we spend our months, which is how we spend our weeks. How we spend our weeks is how we spend our days, and how we spend our days is what we choose to do in those 24 hours. So if you're really serious about pursuing your goals and dreams, you need to start looking at how you're spending your time in this level of detail. I've met so many people in my life that have these amazing aspirational dreams. Maybe they want to own a really nice car, be a great chef, or even run a marathon one day. These are dreams that take months, years, if not decades, to eventually achieve. And the problem is, when you ask these people how they spend their days, they often don't know. Or, if we're being honest, they're just spending their days scrolling on social media. And this is so dangerous because we might think that we can just worry about doing all of this when we're older, and as a result of that, we don't need to worry about how we plan our time now. That's something for future me to deal with. But this constant postponing of our goals and dreams is the biggest reason why most people feel so overwhelmed and stressed by how they're spending their life day to day. And the reason why this feeling of overwhelm isn't going away anytime soon is that for most of the population, our lives lack structure. And I can guarantee if you look back when you were a kid growing up in school, you felt a lot less stressed. And obviously this is because we had less responsibilities, but it also comes down to the biggest factor, and that's because our life had a structure. So when we're an adult, we don't have this same structure. In fact, this gives us a sense of powerlessness because we're not actually aware of how much time we waste. And this is where the crash calendar comes in, because it makes us accountable for how we're spending our time and makes certain that we're actually going to be contributing towards the future that we want. But before I show you exactly how to set the crash calendar up, we need to get something straight. And that's, I think, that most people that have used a calendar before think about it the wrong way round. So probably you think that the best way to use a calendar is to plan in appointments or events that you already know are going to happen. Say for example, you schedule a doctor's meeting, or there's a football game that you're scheduled to play in, you'll put that in the calendar. But that's not what we want to be using calendars for, and that's the biggest mistake most people make when they're trying to get started with time management. Instead, we want to be using calendars to plan events that we want to do in the future. This keeps us way more accountable in the future because it starts to give us more of that structure that our lives have been lacking. And from this, you'll stop feeling so lost and overwhelmed, which is the biggest reason why most people get caught up scrolling through Instagram or TikTok. So the crash calendar gives us this structure, but it's crucial that you set it up in the right way, else none of what I'm about to say is gonna work. So this might be a bit of an unpopular opinion, but I've got something that I want to get off my chest. And I'm sure you've heard of time blocking, but if you haven't, I'll give you a really quick overview. Time blocking basically involves scheduling all of your tasks in the day in a calendar so that there's no kind of free time left unaccounted for. So essentially your calendar is completely full. And I've experimented with this before and even made a video all about it, but I think there's one massive flaw that until now everybody has been overlooking, myself included. And this is a problem that we all need to solve, Because if we don't, then we're never going to be able to stick to these time management strategies. Let's say, for example, you've been using time blocking in your calendar and you've been really good and stuck with it for a week, maybe even 2. You plan to wake up at a certain time in the morning every single day, brush your teeth, and then go to the gym. And that's been setting you up nicely for the rest of the day. However, one night you're going out with your friends for a meal and you're feeling a little bit spontaneous. So you get back to your house way later than you expected. And the next day you wake up way later than you hoped for and you miss the gym. And you fall way behind in your calendar, you end up feeling overwhelmed, and you abandon time blocking before it ever really got off the ground. And that's why the crash calendar is so good. Because unlike time blocking, it's optimized to be something you can actually stick to. And because it's something we can actually stick to, it means we're not going to get discouraged and give up. So how do we get started using a crash calendar? Well, I like to put it on my iPad, but don't get me wrong, you can use it on paper as well if that's what you prefer. I just like having the ability to sync my calendar across all of my different devices, and because I travel quite a lot, it's really good to have that kind of updating of different time zones, and I don't have to think about that, it just does it automatically. But if you look at my crash calendar, you'll see that it's probably much more relaxed than you were expecting. And the way that you make this method so easy and so beginner friendly is that you just pick 3 things to focus on. So if you're familiar with the channel or you've seen any of my stuff before, you'll know that I'm a big advocate for picking just 3 goals. You want 1 goal that helps your wealth, 1 goal that helps your health, and 1 goal that contributes towards your mindset, things like learning. But there's actually 1 more thing I use on my calendar that I'll get into a little bit later. You'll see that I'm color coding each of these goals on my calendar. My wealth is in green, my mindset is in purple, and my health is a mixture of blue and yellow. So for me, my 3 goals are to try and get a 6-pack for summer, to try and build this YouTube channel, and to read more books all about business and kind of just getting a growth mindset. So as you can see, that's how it relates to my calendar. So what you need to be doing is picking 1 goal from each of the 3 categories I mentioned, narrowing down what exactly you need to do to be successful in those goals, and then trying to put 1 or 2 sessions a week into your calendar. A little bit more if it's health related, because obviously this needs to compound over time. But for the eagle-eyed among you, I'm sure that you've noticed there's another thing that I'm not even spoken about. And even though this isn't a part of that trinity of goals I mentioned earlier, I think relationships are a huge part of what makes us happy in our lives. And this is a really simple addition that can level up your crash calendar if you want to, but what I try and aim to do is book in 2 to 3 times a week, which I can spend with my family or my friends, and that goes straight into the crash calendar in that nice bright red. But if you've got to this point in the video, I'm going to let you into a few secrets that are really going to help you level up your crash calendar. And as a result of that, it's going to take your time management skills and just productivity in general to a whole new level. Have you ever wondered why you can walk into almost any McDonald's in the world and it'll be essentially the same experience every single time? From the uniforms to the smells, the table, the food, the wait times, the machines you order your food on, everything is the same regardless of which country you're in. These kind of companies are ran as franchises, or as Michael E. Gerber says in his fantastic book, The E-Myth Revisited, these are turnkey businesses. And basically, businesses like McDonald's run on systems so strong that almost anybody can enter in and manage a McDonald's from scratch. They're given all of the instructions and all of kind of the details that they have to follow so that each McDonald's is identical to every new one that kind of opens up over time. And as a result of this, the people that work in McDonald's and the owners in general never really feel overwhelmed. That's because the systems are so strong that they allow for predictable and pretty consistent results. And believe it or not, but what we built with the crash calendar is a system for sort of managing our life. And there's a reason why we need to borrow these kind of practices of systems into our own lives. So how do we use this to actually level up our crash calendar when we have the basics in play? Well, have you ever heard of the term, what gets measured gets managed? And the key with this is that we need to stick with our crash calendar for at least a month. And that's why this is a little bit more of an advanced technique, because probably if you're a beginner, you haven't been able to stick with any sort of method for longer than, I don't know, a couple of weeks tops. But the key with sticking with this over time is that we can look to see where the improvements might need to be made in our calendar to make us feel more happy and more satisfied with our lives. And this is gonna represent a huge mindset shift for you, where you're gonna start to work on your life and not just in it. Because there is a massive distinction between living fully and intently on your life and just living by accident and letting things happen to you by coincidence. So to stick with your crash calendar, you need to be making adjustments when things aren't working. But you need to make sure that you're carrying out everything you have planned every day. So to find out how to do this, you need to watch this video. I'll see you there.